that's where some of that crossover comes in with like the blanket training. I know you've discussed that before with the IBLP, and I believe it was in the Shiny Happy People documentary as well. But it's basically about tempting your children with a toy or an item that they want, or even food sometimes, and then punishing the child when they go for that item and preventing them from getting something. So it's basically good old fashioned entrapment.
Yeah.
You set something up for your child and you just wait for them to fall into it unknowingly because they trust you and they love you. And so you're giving them something, they're going to take it. And then when they go to take it, you discipline them because you want to break them down before they, can have any type of independence whatsoever.
Yeah. And they're doing this to infants.
That is correct. So in their book, they give an example of using these tactics on a child, one of their own children as young as 4 months. But what they instruct in the book is as young as 6 months. So I remember my parents using a particular method when it comes to training infants and toddlers, but more specifically infants, is when it comes to taking a nap. And I have another quote in my book in their book about that. But basically, when you put your child down to take a nap, if they cry, when you set them in the crib, they are punished. What you want to do is train the baby, the literal baby, to be in complete submission where they shut off all emotion, crying.
Oh, no.
Even when they wake up from a nap, you don't want to hear anything. And I remember one of my second to the youngest sibling, when they were born, my parents using this method on them, and how they would be my parents were so proud of how well they had trained my brother for this. So they would put him in the crib and he would I remember I just have like pictures in my head where he would just lay on his stomach in the crib and, his head would be sideways and his eyes would just be wide open, and he would blink, but he would never cry. He would never show emotion. And to break a baby's will at that age, what does that do to their brain development and their emotional development as children, but also once they're grown and out in the world, they focus so much on having obedient children and children that are well behaved, but at what cost? Are they truly well behaved? Maybe, but why? Because they're being abused and severely psychologically tortured at home. Mm-hmm. So of course they're going to be well behaved in public.
Yeah, and I think something about that too is you're teaching your child how to be controlled, not how to regulate and find connection. Because a baby cries because it has certain needs that needs to be met, hungry, tired, whatever it may be, stomach ache. And when you teach them that that's wrong, they just completely disconnect, I would imagine, from their own needs. And it's not something that's self-soothing. They're just learning that they are on their own. And what tends to happen from the research that I've done myself is that when you teach a child to be controlled instead of connected and independent, you just teach them to walk right into an abusive relationship and not know that that's not okay because you're used to that submission and you're used to that punishment. And so it really just sets the child up for failure in the future.
Absolutely. That becomes their normal baseline. They don't know any better. And I say they, but me included, because that's exactly what happened to me is when I got out of the cult upbringing, and I literally ran away from home to get out of it, I immediately ran into the arms of someone else exactly like that, who was actually connected in the cult in a kind of a different way. But that's exactly what it does. And my brother, who I just mentioned, I remember having those vivid memories of him being trained that way. He's the only other kid besides myself that got out of the cult. And he has no memories. His brain has literally shut off all memories. I think he told me once that his earliest memory is 13 years old. He remembers nothing because your body does that when it's in traumatic situations in order to protect you so you can survive. It will completely just block those memories. So that's case in point what happens when you take discipline to the absolute extreme, as in this case. I wanted to mention real quick another quote from the Pearls book that really upset me yesterday, and thank you for your patience with me yesterday. The audience doesn't know, but we tried to record yesterday and I ended up not being able to, and we had to do it today because I was reading some more things about the Pearls books, and my body, even though I've been to a tremendous amount of therapy and I talk about my experience openly, something about talking about this book makes my body absolutely reject it.
Yeah.
Like I have no control over it. I don't feel like it bothers me on a surface level, but it obviously does because, I had like a horrible panic attack yesterday after I talked about it or after I was like just reading about it. And, for over an hour, literally just laying on my floor. Like that's the extreme. And I've been out 15 years and it still affects me to that degree, which is wild. I'm ready for it to not affect me, but unfortunately that's again the level. But something Michael Pearl has said about his methods is that they, and I quote, are adaptable no matter unique disability or psychological condition, which is so upsetting. I was undiagnosed autism and ADHD. I did not get diagnosed with ADHD till I think 3 years ago. And I didn't get diagnosed with autism until Halloween this past year, actually. Wow. So not even a year ago. And so I had that growing up, and I know several of my siblings did too. And none of that matters because, number one, we weren't even given healthcare or dental care or anything until I was an adult. So I'm still paying the price for not having those services as a child. But furthermore, no one had visibility to see that some of us were struggling with mental health or with disabilities. And my parents certainly, that was no reason for them to punish us even less or to try different methods with some of us who were a little bit different. So several of the deaths that have been linked to the Pearls were of children who had been adopted by couples, adopted from overseas, and they had mental health difficulties and disabilities. And again, Michael Pearl has stood by his book. He's never been ashamed to say that stand by what he says. In fact, something I read again about him is that he said, there's always parents that take it to the extreme, but anytime he's talked about in the news, his Amazon sales spike up. And that just infuriated me.
Wow.
That someone could be so dedicated to the bullshit like this, that regardless that 3 children have died because of your book, because of your teachings and you telling people and instructing people that this is God's way, and they take that as truth, you're more concerned about your Amazon book sales going up and that you're going to make more money off of it, off of literal children dying. It's disgusting. Oh my gosh. It's so revolting. It's absolutely horrifying.
Oh, what do we have to do to get this book pulled from Amazon? I feel like writing multiple very strongly worded emails to whoever I need to get this down. Like how has this not been taken down yet?
Yeah. I know that there was a petition circulating. I want to say in 2017. I could be wrong on the date, but there was a petition circulating. I think it got over 144,000 signatures on it, but it eventually went dead, and Amazon released a statement saying they weren't going to remove the books for whatever reason. I don't believe they actually gave a reason. They just stated that they weren't going to remove the books. So I think now we have a bigger platform since 2017 or whenever that was originally done. And I think the louder we are and the more we talk about this book and the more angry people get, and rightfully so, we can make a bigger impact because we can make those bigger waves and get the attention of the right people to remove this book, because in no world should this be legal, much less celebrated and promoted.
Yeah.